Hey, Hannah, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And I know just before the call here, we're hearing a little bit about your background, which is absolutely incredible. I feel like you've lived multiple lifetimes with your career and have had so much success. So we'll include, of course, a bio and go into it a little bit more here. But for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to talk about a more recent initiative I know you've been working on and have had tremendous success with amplified planning. So I just love to hear, how did this get started? I mean, what were you seeing, feeling in the market that really kind of spun up this idea to get it going?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, coming from as a financial planner myself, there were so many things that I needed when I first started. So much of what we've been focusing on with Amplify Planning and our work with the Your Financial Planner Now What podcast and FPA has really been me trying to fill a need that I had in my career when I first started. And so, we have now with Amplify Planning, we have two main initiatives that are going on. One is going to be the externship that we run in partnership with FPA. And then the other is our Amplify Planning Core kind of offering. And that is a new meeting every month that we share with clients, a real client meeting where they like you get to watch my client meeting and the good, bad, and ugly of it all, and really get that firsthand experience of what does financial planning actually look like in practice. So how it got started, and feel free to redirect me if you want. But really with the externship, we were working with the FPA National and really working on their new planner initiative. So we had the Euro Financial Planner Now What. We were helping again, trying to fill the need that I had in my career. And so when 2000 or 2020 hit and the pandemic was coming, it was coming in full force. Nobody had an idea if this was actually going to be a real thing yet. I mean, I remember being on some of these initial meetings and being like, y'all are overreacting. Like this is just going to go away like everything else does,
Yeah.
but it didn't. And so we were in these meetings and we were really looking at how can we help? How can FPA, which is a financial planning association, how can they help the community of financial planners out there? And so there were lots of ideas, conferences were getting canceled, and we kept hearing about students, and students were losing their internships. And we know what an important kind of developmental piece that is for a student's journey into the profession of financial planning. And so we kept hearing this from students. It started trickling in. We started hearing for some professors, and then it just kind of built up. And then we were like, oh my gosh, like this is a really big issue. And FPA was really uniquely situated to address that issue of how can we help students who lost their internships. And so that's what we did. My husband works with me full time. He has an education background and a film and digital media background as well. And so we said, okay, let's take this on. Let's see if we can really help students who've lost their internships. And so that's how the externship really came about. And then Amplify Planning came about after that.
Okay. So the externship, just for
Hmm.
listeners to, if
Yep.
they're not familiar, and you'll please stop me if
Yeah,
I'm
you're good.
miscommunicating it, but it's basically it walks a potential
Hmm.
advisor or someone who's studying financial planning, whoever signed it through this sort of internship as digital experience where they're
Yep.
able to sit in real client meetings and
Yep.
learn from them. Is that right? Can you share a
Yeah,
little bit more
absolutely.
about
So the
it?
externship has evolved we've ran two of them already, and we're going to do another one again in 2022. And so so what we wanted to do is show students what financial planning looks like in practice, right? That was our goal. And so every week we cover a different topic in depth. So we'll go investment planning on one week, we'll go, education planning on another week, estate planning. There's, cash flow planning, insurance planning, all the
The
things that
full
really in the CF
curriculum then.
a whole curriculum. And so we
Okay.
would bring in, and it was really structured. So every week we'd bring in three experts. I'll tell you, first time we ran it, we had over 60 different financial planners that students were able, or learners were able to really get exposure to. But we have our three key experts every week. So on Monday, they would share, how does that one area of financial planning, what does that look like in practice for them? So different firms, different models, different clients, right? How does this topic evolve? And then they would share their deliverables. So all these planners would share, three different you get to see and compare the three different deliverables every week. And then what we would do is we'd bring them back for live office hours on Wednesday so students could ask any questions that they have. And I'll tell you, so such these externships are so much fun, and students are so engaged asking questions, asking the hard questions too,
Mhm.
and really kind of diving more into what that looks like. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, with the externship, we really wanted to give, again, the firsthand experience of what this looks like. And so students have access to eMoney, Morningstar Advisor Workstation,
Wow.
and other softwares that we would offer. So it was TD Ameritrade and now it was Schwab, like their full education center. And so we would basically, what we did is we created a virtual planning shop that these students could come in and learn the software. So we would then, they would take those deliverables, one or two deliverables. We would
Yeah.
give them assignments where they were having to recreate that. So they were doing the work as if they were in an internship, but for a lot of different firms.
Wow.
So that's really what we did in that first externship. We'd also bring in, at FPA, like they're really the experts on career development and what this looks like. And so
Mhm.
we would bring in other experts to really showcase, like, here's other elements of planning, here's other ways to develop your career, really trying to
Mhm.
show a holistic view of what they have as options for their career. We talked to a number of students, we did focus groups before we created this. And the number one thing students wanted from an internship experience, they wanted to be able to know what their career options were. And we were like, when we do this, we can blow that, like we can knock that one out of the park. We can show them what their career options are. And so that's what we would do. We'd bring in people with different types of firms. We'd bring in some of the fintech firms and say, here's what a career in fintech looks like. Or this
Mm,
is what financial planning as an employee benefit looks like. Or here's what charitable giving would look like for a career option. And
got
so
it.
really trying to show this holistic perspective. Now, the second year that we ran the externship, we did
That was all part
exact
of the curriculum, is that right?
Yep,
That
that
the
was all
whole
part of the
okay.
curriculum. So
And so
we told
each
student
piece those go
oh,
ahead.
so each week we'd set up, it was about 20 hours. And when we surveyed
Yeah.
our students, that's about how much work it was. So this is a really robust program.
Wow.
20 hours. I think we had it was like 130 or 160 videos at the end of the program.
Holy smokes.
Many, many hours of video content because we're teaching training on eMoney. Students could get eMoney certified in the program. So
Wow.
it was a very robust program.
Yeah.
It qualified, the first year was 160, second year was 180 experience hours with the CFP board. So if you're trying to get your CFP designation, experience is a huge issue. And so you get that experience on this because we're really showing what planning looks like in practice. So that was the first year. The second year, we brought in real client meetings because what
Okay,
we
got it.
learned was that people just want to see what financial planning is,
Mhm.
maybe even before they want to commit to all the money that goes into education, the years of your life that it is, that has to be there. And so we're really trying to shorten that to show what financial planning looks like so people can make educated decisions of whether or not this is a career path for them. And so
Okay.
we're really, we thought we were solving for students who lost their internships. What we realized is we were solving access to financial planning. So
Mhm.
you didn't have to, we had high school students in this program, all the
Mhm.
way up to college students of every major, all the way to many career changers who are trying to decide if this is a second career for them or not. And so
Mhm.
we were able, 20 hours a week is not a small commitment, but we were able to give them this experience and then they could make that decision if they want to become a financial planner or not.
That's amazing. So that first piece of it, I think you said it was
Mhm.
160 hours, was that right?
Yep. Yep.
160 hours, about 20 hours a week, give or take. It sounds like there's pre-recordings, actual real time.
Hmm.
They're getting certified along the way.
Yep.
And then that layered on, I think you said it was 180 hours.
Yep.
Uh,
That's the next, that was the second year.
that was
So
the second.
yep.
Okay. So and then that is the year that you brought in the real
Yep.
time or the pre-recorded interviews
Yep.
with clients and such. So
Yeah.
wow. So
Yeah.
today is it the original curriculum plus the
Mhm.
recordings with clients?
Yep. So we, obviously we refresh the curriculum every year.
Yeah.
So we're bringing in new experts, fresh perspectives. We want, if a student takes it again, we want them to get new ideas, new exposure to new people. We want to really keep that fresh and on kind of that cutting edge of what financial planning is. It is a similar structure with the clients as well. And so we are bringing back our clients, John and Diana. So it's a couple who are trying to decide if they could retire or what that would look like. And so we walk them through that financial planning process. And it's
Yeah.
pretty neat to
Yeah.
get to do that with them.
Yeah.
And we were so grateful. It was really fun. At the end of the externship, I had been talking to John and Diana because they're real clients of mine, and they just got such a kick out of it that all these externs were following along with their story, and they agreed to come back and do a live Q&A. So we actually have a recorded live Q&A with my clients coming back and answering all of the externs' questions about what were they thinking in the middle of this process. It was pretty incredible. They were so gracious to be able to do that, and really like answering the questions of what was the value of planning for them. Were the meetings too long? All of those things. When did you know that you wanted to actually work with Hannah? They answered all of those questions that we think and we kind of wonder what's going on in the client's mind.
Yeah.
So it was pretty incredible. So in the externship, that's going to be there as well this next year, so people can see
That's
that
so
piece of it.
fun.
Yeah.
I also love and I admire that you didn't let compliance stop you to be able to bring clients, to the table. Cause I mean, that is such a
It's a
red
big
flag.
deal.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
even photography, right? Like you need to get consent or things of that sort. So that didn't stop you and is providing so much value. And then it's bringing value to the client as well. That's, it's a win-win, it seems. So
It is. And I'll tell you, my compliance guy has been wonderful through all of this. I'm pretty sure he was like, "You want to do what? Do you know what your privacy rules are?" And
yeah.
so he's been really great in working with me. And, we change all the client data, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, like, we're editing all of their client documents, everything like that. Like, if somebody's, there have been some clients we have where we've blurred out where they're working, different pieces like that. But we really, and what's so great about it is we were really worried. I mean, when we had the idea, we thought, okay, well, we could maybe pay somebody to come in and
Mhm.
pretend that they're a client. But then we're just like, there's so many facts that go into it. And we had, in the first externship, somebody did a recording, a mock client meeting. And I just remember watching it and being like, they're hitting the elements, but that's not real. Like,
Yeah.
that's not really what happens. And so so we were like, we really debated if we should just pull in models and create new scenarios. And then we're like, no, we need to see real clients. We need to see their real reaction.
Yeah.
So you get to see John and Diane's reaction when I tell them that basically something major has to happen in order for them to retire and that
Mhm.
they don't have their savings up to speed.
Mhm.
You get to see them process like really difficult decisions of should they do a home remodel? Should they not do a home remodel given their situation?
Yeah.
You get to see medical issues that impact their situation. It's stuff that you couldn't script because it's
Mhm.
so real, and you get to see their real response to it.
Mhm.
And that's not something that you can fake.
You're right. And it's well, it's only in a client meeting that you get to see that, right? So that
Yeah,
they're willing to share that is it's a gift. That's
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty incredible. I know we were chatting before that
yeah,
it almost feels like you've hit this chord of this new way of educating,
yeah.
with what people need in this digital age and providing this element of realness, right? And not sort of that ivory tower. So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, I completely agree. We have a pretty strict rule that we have in the externship of no
Mhm.
PowerPoints are allowed.
No way.
Yeah, no
Really?
PowerPoints. Oh my gosh. Well,
How do you get around it?
it's so
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
So we basically say you need to be able to show us the document. You need to be able to show us what this looks like. But
Mhm.
we don't use any PowerPoints. It is all we very much experiential learning is what we're focusing on.
Mhm.
And what's so great is everybody. I heard so many people saying we're zoomed out. It's like
Mhm.
no, no, no. We're not. I mean, yes, we are zoomed out, but like nobody wants to sit on a webinar. Nobody wants. You look at how people consume content now. It's
Mhm.
podcast. They want something to be engaging. They want to learn,
Mhm.
but they really want to be challenged, and that's what we were able to do with the externship. So we were able to take all of those best practices and put it in. And people telling us, I mean, we have recorded testimonials and obviously written testimonials, and I can't tell you how many people have told us they're just like it's like this like it's like a Netflix show that you just want to binge on in the
That's so
externship where you
fun.
just have to keep going.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
that's really what we wanted to create with this. And
Yeah.
and then when you love financial planning, I mean, like I love financial planning, and so many of these externs do too. It's just like you just want more. You're like,
Mhm.
just give me more. And that's how I was when I started my career. And that's exactly what we found in this group. So
Mhm.
it's pretty special, pretty cool. So
Well, you've had, let's see, it was you're able to register 900 people. Am I getting, I believe that
Yeah.
that number's right. And how in the world? I mean, you've built an
Yeah.
amazing base, right? Just with your connection, this
Yeah.
podcast, you know, actually being in the industry itself. But how did you, I mean, that's for a new program to come out, right? Such a quick
Yeah.
period of time to get that many registered. What did you do? What was your promotions plan like and your
Yeah.
outreach?
Absolutely. So the first year when we opened it, I mean, it was like we opened the door, we had 3 weeks for registration. And
Mhm,
so what was so neat about it is that we filled such a need of students who were losing their internships on
mhm.
so many levels. So we opened it up, and I remember within like 3 days, we had 100 people registered.
Wow.
And we ended up, so that first year, it was a free program. It was literally us saying we want to give back to students. Like that, this is really what it is. You need help, we're here to help you.
Mhm.
And so because it was a free program, in the technology piece, there was some issues with syncing it up. We had over 1,900 people sign up for it in those 3 weeks in that initial
Goodness.
offering. So it was like wildfire. When we look at how did this offer, it was so many people had a need, and we were able to directly fill that need. I mean, we had universities from all over the country who were promoting it to their business schools, who were offering internship credit for it. They were
Mm,
able to fill that need, right? For a lot of students, they had to do that for graduation. Reddit was a big referral source for us, which is just crazy. I don't know how that happened. But when we asked how people found us, so we were able to do. FPA also has 80 chapters around the country, so we were
mhm,
able to share that with their chapter list, and so there was a lot of word of mouth. It was so cool. It was really the financial planning community coming together and
yeah.
providing help for their students. So I was getting calls from career centers who are wanting to know more about this externship program because an FPA member out in Boston who I've never met before, I had never heard their name before, called them to tell them about the externship so that they could share it with their students because he thought that it would be able to help them. So we
Wow.
were just making connections all over the country, because we really were a solution when there wasn't a solution. And
Mhm,
so that's really kind of how the program kind of blossomed, and really how we got started. And
mhm,
nobody knew what they were getting into. My gosh, we didn't know what we were getting into,
mhm,
much less the students. I'll never forget, we realized at one point, I think it was a week into the registration, where we realized that we had high school students signing up for this, which is
wow.
just crazy. And so we ended up, we thought we were designing an education curriculum for juniors and seniors who lost their internships.
Mhm,
And when we saw that, we were like, oh my gosh. And so we ended up changing it from a learning perspective. So somebody who has no experience in financial planning is going to be able to complete the program. If
mhm,
you're a junior or senior in college, we're going to be able to meet you at that level. Or if you have experience, we're going to be able to meet you at that level too. We
mhm,
really wanted to make it accessible to everyone. So that's how we first got the word out. It was media. It was, we were able to connect with really big names in that experiential learning space, FPA chapters, and university professors were kind of, I don't want to say desperate,
mhm,
but there was really like, there just was no solution. And we were able to step in. And then we provided an excellent experience for their students. We went all in. Like we put our chips on the table on this one.
mhm.
We did not, I mean, this was an experience for students. And, I told you beforehand, my husband and I were both working anywhere from 8 to 14 hours a week, 7 days, 6 or 7 days a week on this for 3 months to make this happen.
Wow.
And so, yeah, but students loved it. Like, you can't, I mean, now if you talk to anybody, I still get messages all the time from
Yeah.
students. And so it got word of mouth. And so, when we ran it the second year, we charged for it. So it was $199.
Mhm,
Plus, you need to be a member of FPA, which is $50 if you're a student.
mhm.
And we had 940 people sign up for it. And so we really
Goodness.
pushed hard. We have our email list. I'm emailing people, every week. So you can go to, so we're sharing, kind of my perspectives on a career in financial planning, what this looks like, what
Yep.
I'm learning, all of those pieces. We had, the podcast that we were running, You're a Financial Planner, Now What? We had the network of, financial planners, but then we really had word of mouth. And
Mhm.
that's really what I think has helped this program tremendously,
Yeah.
because it's now known as like a program. The CFP board just put out a guide, a career paths guide, and they actually listed out the externship as something that people should consider doing. So
Oh,
we've really been able to integrate it into a lot of places where aspiring financial planners are going to look to further their career.
wow. That's fantastic. It does sound like word of mouth was really key, whether that wasn't, if that was intentional or not. But as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah,
you hit it at this like dynamo time
perfect.
for, yeah, and had the knowledge and the skill sets and the capacity to be able to take that on. And then how did you go about planning this curriculum? Because you could unroll this product, right? But with this new service offering, but if it's just sort of want, it doesn't really pick up. But if you were able to, and you have proven success with how strong it was, how did
Mhm.
you kind of know what to put together so that it was an experience and it is an experience?
I mean, I went back to, well, this is what I needed when I first started. This is really, this is what I needed. When we were doing the whole program, it was really fun. I was telling some of the externs, I was like, this feels like I'm creating like an escape room of my
Uh-huh.
favorite things that I'm just going to
That's
share with a whole
fun.
group of people. So it was really, I think people caught the passion. Like, I love financial planning. I love the impact that it can have on people, and so that's really what we were doing in this program, is really sharing that with people. And so bringing in experts. So you'll see like some of our, like we have another course offering, amplified planning core, as well. And so we're pretty tight on that content, and we are tight on the content on this, on the externship. But it's there. It's really, you know, we have a lot of fun on it. There's a huge community. I mean, the forums on this thing are just wild.
Mhm.
People sharing resources, asking questions. It's so much fun. So yeah, it's really, and I have to give a lot of credit out to my husband, from an education standpoint. I'm just a financial planner throwing things together. And he's like, I'm throwing things up on the wall. And he's like, okay, like we can get to all this, but we have to reorder this entirely. And there were even times where I was like, okay, so here's what we want to do. And my husband would be like, okay, and that's boring. He's like, I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to sit through that. How can we
Yeah.
reimagine this to be more engaging? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's a little bit frustrating in the moment, to be honest, but it's so good and so important when we
Yeah.
really think, again, how do people want to be learning?
Yeah.
I think on our Amplified Planning website, I forget how we worded it, but Charlie is the one in charge of making sure that any of our content isn't boring.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
love it. No
actually
boring content.
no boring content. We want stuff that's really going to be engaging. And
Yeah.
now, like, my parents might find it boring, but if you're interested in financial planning, like, you're going to love it.
So the digitally minded person in me
Mhm.
is wondering, like, okay, so you've got this rule of no boring content, but then how did you actually build it? I mean, we talked a little bit about the studio, and I loved for
Yeah.
to hear a little bit about that, but then like were you using like a educational software to help
Yep.
plug this? How did that come together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we used Kajabi, for the first year. And again, there is no good learning management system that fits every solution. There just isn't. If there would, it would be the hands down winner, but there's not one out there. So we used Kajabi. This last year, we've used, FPA has a learning management system on their end that we used.
Okay.
So yeah, we used Kajabi for this, and so we would record the videos like this, and we would bring in, experts would be on Zoom. Actually, we didn't record them like this. This was a second year thing. Anyway, we'd record Zoom meetings like this,
Yeah.
and then we would just put this into learning management. So there was a whole pathway every week where you'd be
Mhm.
like, we had videos for people to watch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there were many quizzes involved in it. I think there were like something like, it was like 90 something assessments or quizzes throughout the program.
Oh,
Um,
smokes.
so like we really built this out. So we would have these videos, and so I would record the video. I would work on coordinating it with the experts, all of this, especially that first year. It was wild.
Mhm.
um, and then Charlie would record it all, and then he would then edit it, to
Okay.
really make it really seamless, kind of that whole experience.
Yep.
Because I mean, you understand this, but you know there is something about the polish that matters.
Mhm.
Certainly in certain places where you can be really, I mean, I love my Insta stories. You don't have to be polished there.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to a learning system where you have a short attention spans of people, like they want to know, like, the same thing. So, like, So this polish, so it would have the same intro music, it would have the
Mhm.
same lower thirds, it would have the same like production kind of quality every single
Mhm.
time. At the end of the externship, we would do, we had these live events. It was so funny. Some of the students were talking and they were like, oh my gosh, does anybody else hear that music in their sleep? And it's like that was part of that polish that we really wanted to bring to it. So it was easy to click on the next video. We didn't want there to be anything that would limit people from just moving on to the next piece.
Okay, that's fantastic. It's absolutely amazing just to hear a little bit more about how you all put that
Yeah.
together too. So, I just can't even imagine like having videos every single day.
Oh, it was wild. Yeah, it was a
It is
lot.
wild. I mean, yeah, and just the prep work that goes into that. There's so
Hmm.
much work that goes into each one of those. And how the heck do you find the time? I mean,
Yeah.
between having your own firm, being a mom,
Yeah.
getting this going. I mean, all the day-to-day of
All the
life.
things.
Where did you fit it all in? So,
Yeah, well, I told you a little bit of my career path of where I was 22, started working for a woman who was 68. 4 years later, bought her practice, bought another small practice after, and it was just wild from that management standpoint. And it was pretty much anything that had been sold in financial services from the 80s to then I had in
mhm.
my practice. It was
Wow.
I learned a ton,
Yeah.
but I did what all the consultants said, and I basically took my core financial planning clients and started my
Mhm.
own practice, my own RIA practice, and so it freed up a lot of time.
Mhm.
So we had just hired somebody. So I don't do this all by myself. I think that's that should be a given if anybody's listening to this. So I don't do this by myself. So we have somebody here. So we had when the first externship rolled around, we had somebody working full time. He had just started right before the pandemic hit, and so he was able to really shoulder a lot of what was happening with the practice at that time, so we could really focus on this side of it. So even now, he's moved on, and we have a part-time paraplanner. She's out of Ohio, so
Mm.
everything is virtual. She's a mom getting back in the workforce. It's really, really neat. So she helps me with my practice tremendously right
Mhm.
now. When that full-time employee left, we filled it with two part-time employees. We have my paraplanner, who's so wonderful, and then we also hired an executive assistant for me. So she
Mhm.
runs my email, she runs my calendar, because
Mhm.
all of the scheduling just was so much. She does all of that now for me. It was really a hire to just clear my head of
Mhm.
all of the day-to-day stuff. So we have those are the people who help me in my practice. My husband works with me full time, so it's a
Mhm.
complete competitive advantage there.
Yeah.
From a work standpoint, I mean, to be able
Yeah.
to have that level of production, like eye on everything and the
Mhm.
education eye, like it would cost me so much money to have that. So just from a work standpoint, but then also from a life standpoint, I mean, we're technically still in quarantine from COVID right now, and we're able to juggle that just so much easier because we both work together,
Mhm.
and so we both know what our workloads are, and we know how we can reprioritize our work to make sure that our family is taken care of. We
Yeah, that's
have
fair.
in-home childcare, so that is tremendously helpful. And then for all of our marketing, we have a whole kind of online team. So I ended up hiring a project manager, or if you an integrator, if you will, if you know those
Mhm.
terminologies. So she manages the whole team because I'm not a good manager of people. We have a copywriter that we work with. We have a virtual assistant who's putting everything on the website,
Mhm.
making sure all the emails go out on time, making she's posting to my Twitter or Facebook or whatever the social things are. We have a graphic designer that we have on kind of retainer as well. So we
Mhm.
have that whole team working as well. So it is people see me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how are you able to do it all?" It's like, well, I don't. I have a whole team helping
Yeah.
me do
Yeah.
things, and we've started simplifying our life too. Of we're now doing a monthly program
Mhm.
for planners called Amplify Planning Core.
Mhm.
We instead of producing, so we send out like a weekly email, and we have social posts and everything. But as far as like really creating content, we provide one really amazing piece of content or like course every
Mhm.
month. And
Mhm.
so it's been able to help me. So when I look at it on my calendar, I'm, really spending 2 to 3 days on that instead of spending, and I'm really able to focus on that. And so I can kind of limit that on my calendar, which
Mhm.
helps frees up a lot more of my calendar and headspace too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that just transparency about how you keep it all running, because I think there's so many of us where when something's done really well, it's like, wow, it's like a performance or something, but people don't always realize the behind the scenes and the hard work that went into
Mhm.
that to be able to make it shine on the outside. So,
And
um,
it's always been these positions of like growth, right? So like when it was just Charlie and I, it was, I had a video, like a podcast editor, right? So we were
yeah,
able to do that. And then we added on a copywriter because we were getting in so many fights about the copywriting on the copy. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I'm not good at it. And
yeah,
he wasn't good at it. And so, it's really easy to see something like this and be like, oh my gosh, I have to have this whole team. I have to be able to hire all these people. It's like, no, no, no. You start where you are. You're just like, what's your pain point? And then you just solve that. And then
mhm,
you just keep moving. We had a couple years ago, I was talking with a friend. I mean, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, before all the externship. And I was just talking about how fortunate I was. And when my husband's working with me full time, we're able to do some of these things. And it just feels, so incredibly grateful. And this friend, she was able to provide such good perspective. She's like, Hannah, you've been talking about doing this for 6 years now. And she's like, and now you're here. And it just reminded me that these things aren't overnight successes. Nothing's an
that's
overnight
right.
success.
That's
It's
right.
like, this started before we were married, talking about
Mhm,
what do we want our life to be like. And then
mhm,
you just keep making a decision of what does that look like.
mhm,
And, right now we're reevaluating. We stopped hosting the podcast with FPA and the Year of Financial Planner Now What. There was a Facebook group I was managing with that and still doing some odds and ends there. And so that ended at the end of this year. And so now we're like, okay, how do we want to be structuring our life? We get
mhm.
to reinvent ourselves all the time. And
Yeah.
I think it gives me so much freedom because I have two little girls, like what
Mhm.
they need is going to be different. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I've just gained so much freedom in just being like, these things can evolve and change,
Mhm,
and it's really good and healthy. And it's something to be excited about,
mhm.
the change. And like, yes, it's sad. Like, there's definitely, I've had those moments because you're giving up a part of your identity in some of these changes. But man, to be able to do this and to have a career and a profession where you can do this, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's super amazing, and, it's empowering to hear you talk about it too, so I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah,
And then if
absolutely.
there's any advice you'd have to someone that is thinking about getting into the industry or even wants to take
Mhm.
courses, what would you say to them?
Well, my always hands down advice is stay curious. There's so much to learn. But if you're really looking at getting in, what I would do is and I know I'm pitching my own product here, but it's Amplify Planning Core. It's $30 a month. We made it so cheap. If $30 a month is an issue, email me. Like our goal is to increase access to financial planning.
Mhm,
Just sign up for that program, see a client meeting, get experience of what does the work look like to do these client meetings. Join us on the call. You get to hear people ask me questions about the meeting, like, why did you do this, Hannah? It's pretty amazing. But you can really ask any questions that you have for $30 a month and just get your toe in and just see what it's like.
yeah,
Or if you're like so many people that I knew, I mean, my gosh, I knew some of the most brilliant people who started financial planning when I did, like so brilliant. Like
mhm,
they would be the most amazing financial planners right now. But they learned all the stuff, they had the education, they saw
mhm,
what was happening, and there was just a fundamental disconnect. And
mhm,
if that's you, come join this program and you can just see what another way of doing financial planning is.
mhm,
We get so isolated in this field because there's not these clear career paths yet.
mhm,
If it's not working, please break out of that isolation. I'm telling you about our program, Amplify Planning. Join FPA, get into some of these communities, see how other people are doing it. Because I would bet that if you're passionate about financial planning, about financial literacy, about financial education, there
mhm,
is a place for you. It
mhm,
just might not be where you started, and that's okay.
mhm,
So just know to keep going because your career really matters and the impact that you can have really, really matters.
mhm.
And we want to help support that.
Mhm. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today and just for sharing more about
Yeah.
this initiative that you have going and more about your background and really the behind the scenes of how you've been able to make it happen. So appreciate all you're doing for the community as well. So thank you for taking the time and sharing a little bit more.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. And just thank you for all the listeners who've made it this far. This is just, it, Gosh, I'm just so fortunate for what I do. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate, like I said, appreciate you sharing it with the community and all you're doing to give back. So, and then for those that are listening, we'll include the show notes. We'll also include any links to resources, and of course, if we'd love to include a sign up there, a link to sign
Yeah.
up or learn more information about amplified planning. So,
Awesome. Thank
all
you.
right, thank you.